Okay. Just bear with me for 1 second.
David,
Yes.
Dawn Amorin reported in chat that she is recording, but she's also stepped away for a few minutes.
Okay. I might have to let her into the,
No, she's there.
oh, she's there. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
All right,
under
that's-
Jaden.
I got you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Where is it here? Okay. I'm just going to read the Mass General Law 38 statement. No person shall address the meeting of the public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body. If, after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. I will take a roll call. Commissioner Clark,
Present.
Commissioner Jarvis,
Here.
welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner David Lanoy,
Here.
I am here, Dave Moscaratolo. We have Deputy Gordon with us. Chief Haig is not here tonight. Bob Strahan is not here tonight. We have, oh,
Yeah,
hi, you
yeah.
snuck in. Mayor Roxanne Wiener is on Zoom. Those are the standard folks. We have other folks here. We'll introduce everybody in a moment. All right, so next task, we're going to approve the February 1st meeting, meeting notes, long time ago. Is there a motion? Anybody want a motion?
I would move we approve the meeting minutes,
February 1st,
February 1st.
long time ago. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion about them? All right, Rick? Commissioner Clark? Yes?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
I approve them too. Ed, you were not here, so you can't. Okay, so we've approved the meeting minutes from the last meeting. All right, next we'll move into public comments. I know I have a pad for folks that have signed up. I don't know if anybody online has signed up. If you do, maybe turn your camera on, give us a wave. But I believe we have, Jesus, you signed up, correct? So you want to be the first? Sure. Oh, you do? Okay. Yes, there are people in the waiting room. I apologize.
No problem.
I'm adding all the folks. Now, you just got to bear with me. This is our first time doing all this.
I don't even know how to do that.
I was taught well. All right, so everybody should be in now, I believe. All right, okay. I think you're the only one signed up on live. I'm going to I don't have the timer with me, but I'll trust you're going to do 2 or 3 minutes.
I'll be short. I've already said a lot.
Yes, go ahead. Can you just state your name and your address?
Sure. Jesus Leva, 32 High Street, Greenfield, Massachusetts. I guess my comment is for the commissioners. When the city council voted in the majority last year to partially defund the police department, it was with a broad array of concerns that were brought forth to them by members of the community. A lot of those concerns have yet to be addressed in a public meeting. I have trust and confidence that the police department actually has reasonable answers to a lot of those concerns, but they have yet to be discussed in a public meeting. And I think that when we try to look at the funding issue as, well, we need the money in order to be able to deal with these issues, it's, you know, the community is saying, we want to know that these issues are dealt with before we feel comfortable fully funding the police department again. So I think it's just really important to keep in mind that the cuts didn't come out of nowhere, and whether they are harmful to the community or not, people felt that there was justification behind them. And it's important to address those issues at some point. I am hoping at one point that one of those issues will be the labor dispute policy that the police department has. And I know that David Mascaritolo has committed to addressing that at some point in the future. And the police department seemed willing to do that as well, but we don't yet have a specific date for that. So please let me know when that might happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you just let me know, was there anybody else? I didn't grab the sheet. Were you the only one?
That was the only one.
Okay, great.
They're still in the waiting room.
There's still folks in the waiting room. Okay. All right, that was the last two. Thank you, Penny. I don't think there's any more people. I'll have to keep an eye on I'll have to keep an eye on the participants. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to make public comments? Could you please turn your camera on and speak? All right, with that, I'm going to move on to new business. So first up, I have AMR general updates. Could you introduce yourself and you have to, yeah, you got it. There you
I
go.
got it. How you doing? My name is Mark Leprad. I am one of the paramedic field supervisors for AMR. First, I'd like to say that Patrick Leonardo was promoted to regional director and sends his regards. He was unable to make it tonight. And Kimberly D'Angelo, who's the new operations manager for Western Massachusetts, she was unable to make it. I'm kind of one of the senior supervisors. I do a little admin. I also live up in Franklin County, so I have some understanding of the operation up here as well. So I'm just stepping in tonight because they weren't able to make it. Updates, we're just kind of status quo, operating as normal up here in conjunction with the fire department. I know Patrick told me that there was like a reporting process that I know there were some questions about for complaints. We do have a process in place. So when a complaint does come in to for the Greenfield operation or the area responsibility, when it comes into the AMR Comm Center, it gets divulged into our Microsoft Teams platform. And then depending on where the complaint needs, will be either brought to Kim's attention or Patrick's attention or the education department if it's a clinical issue. And then if you have any other questions, I'll try and, answer them as best as possible.
Yeah, that one a little later. Thank you for the,
I have one question.
thank you for the update. Yes.
Would you please, have you got your card with you?
I don't have my card right now. I'll leave my information. I just got a new promotion, so I'm kind of like waiting for my new cards to come in.
Before you go, just leave your info
Yeah,
with
yeah.
me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, we will move on. I have dispatch updates. And then next I have the, I actually, a little bit of, I left the police for last because there's a little bit more that we're going to talk about, but we'll get dispatch updates. Deputy, will you be giving those, Todd? So Todd, sorry, I didn't mention you at the beginning, but Todd Dodge is here, Lieutenant Dodge, and he'll give the updates for the dispatch.
So again, Lieutenant Todd Dodge, a lot has happened in dispatch and will probably continue to do so. Over the course of the last several months, we've hired a lot of new dispatchers, one of whom is sitting before you and will cause us to hire yet another. So it's a good thing. So Alyssa Ippolito, who's currently serving as a dispatcher, will be transitioning to a full-time police officer. We just got the word today that she was accepted and is now enrolled in the police academy starting in Holyoke, which is a brand new facility. She'll be one of the first graduating classes of the Holyoke Academy, MPTC 1, which is pretty cool. That'll start early April. We're working currently on getting her replaced. That requisition request was already submitted. It's being looked over by those who do that. And hopefully we can fill her position by the end of the week, next week, most likely. But again, we've hired a half a dozen new dispatchers. We recently transitioned to a new training program from them. We have a training program that we use for police.
Recording in
recently-
progress.
We were recently given permission to purchase the same software for dispatchers. From what we've seen is it was extremely successful with this last storm that we had, which was, I was in dispatch. It was probably one of the most chaotic times I've seen in a long time. And actually Alyssa, being one of our newest dispatchers, was in there and they handled it magically. I mean, it couldn't have been more chaotic. There was bells going off, everybody on the radio, several different disciplines at the same time, dozens and dozens of trees down, wires down, and everybody was calling. So there was quite a bit of organization that had to come into place. One of our newer dispatchers came in on overtime and they literally with a smile on their face handled these calls. And I would have been stressed out. So our training program is good. We're going to continue in that direction. We will be short one when Alyssa leaves, but we're hoping to get that filled before she actually vacates the position so we can start training her replacement. They've been busy. There's been a lot of overtime in there. We promoted a new dispatch supervisor. It's been a rocky road. She's experiencing some personal stuff and therefore hasn't been able to really pay too much attention to it. But all of that's being addressed. I'm confident in the not too distant future, we'll be back up and running. And I think we got a good future ahead of us in dispatch.
Great.
Oh, yeah. Also, we're in the midst of, so we've changed a lot of the people. We're actually going to change the physical environment. So part of the capital plan that we have is to redo the dispatch center. Most of you have probably been in there and seen the closet that they work out of. We're blowing out some walls. We're getting new, more ergonomically designed dispatch stations there. It's all in the works right now. The same engineering company that's designed the firehouse. So I recently have plans given to, these are the preliminary ones. These aren't the final ones that'll go out to the contractors, but if you guys want to see them, I will give them to you. You guys can pass them around. So, or I can email them to you. I got them in that version as well, but you'll see where the existing walls are kind of expanded out. They're adding a break room. The lobby, as you know it, will be significantly smaller because now most of that will be the dispatch center. We're going to try to outfit it with 3 full dispatch stations, whereas right now there's really only 2. We got 2.5. They sit almost on top of each other, so the noises from each station interrupts the other station, and there's going to be noise canceling stuff installed in there, and it should bring it up to more of a cutting edge environment in there for them. So it's a tough position sitting in that same room all day, so we definitely owe it to them to give them a better environment to work in, and it's well underway. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment. I'd like to echo that. I get the I am responding from the fire department, so you'll figure that I'm a retired
Shocker.
from their fire department. And I tell you what, I was just about ready to shut my phone off. Dispatchers did a great job. I mean, I bet you in 40 minutes they were dispatched and 35 calls to separate locations for wires down. So kudos to them. They did an outstanding job. I just have to do something with that I am responding app on my phone to see if I can quiet it down some.
And, and I'll add that from the dispatcher's perspective, having been in there, it's one of those occasions where you walk away feeling really proud because police, fire, and dispatch absolutely just got to it. There was just, we're here, we're going from call to call to call. They were shooting from the hip in a lot of cases to try to secure areas. And they were just motoring all day long. Those 3 groups were just seamless on that day. And that's when you need them to be. They really did. So my hat's off.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just have one comment, Todd, as I understood it, we were going to come up online with locating devices between cruisers and dispatch. Has
Yep.
that happened?
So we tested a particular type. And for many reasons, not the least of which was union concerns, cost concerns, et cetera. We gave it a whirl. It didn't work out as we wanted it to work out. Our software, IMC, has the capability of doing that same thing, so they can sort of geo dispatch and find the closest. A lot of things will have to be worked out with the unions, et cetera, but we're talking about purchasing the module that is part of IMC, which is our main database, that will allow us that function. It's not in place yet.
Is that gonna work with fire also, or?
Fire has IMC too, so I would
Okay.
assume when we buy that module, it should work. I don't know all the ins and outs about it, but I think once you buy that module, it'll work with any IMC module that you have, I'm guessing.
And can that interface with AMR?
They'd have to have IMC, which,
Okay.
no. I'd say the simple answer is no.
Good, thank you.
Has the construction started for the dispatchers and do you have a schedule?
It hasn't. So where we're at right now is we're kind of trying to do two simultaneously. We have wetland issues out behind the building that are going to be addressed. Chico Ross, H2M, they're doing all of this for us. Their surveying is starting. And they have developed the preliminary plans for the reconstruction of the dispatch. We have all the infrastructure in place to do the move from the current room to our current roll call room. I think you saw it when you were up there. We got the server switch set up, the power outlets, all that. We have to coordinate with 911. They're the only ones that can actually touch their equipment. They won't let us touch it. So they need a 30-day window. I'm guessing based on where we're at right now, I think it'll go out to bid probably within the next month. And then it's a matter of receiving bids and then the amount of time it takes for, the company who's awarded the contract to get started. So I'm hoping by fall time they're breaking ground. We had talked July or August, but things move quickly. It just, time moves quickly. The process doesn't. So, yeah.
Well, it's moving forward, so.
It's moving.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Lieutenant Dodge.
Got it.
All right. On to the, I'm gonna skip the general comments for now, and I'm gonna move on to the fire department. So we have Captain Peter MacGyver and Chief Strahan is here, so welcome. You faked us out a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know I was gonna make it. Stay there, Pete. I apologize for my dress. I just was out of town. Didn't know I was gonna make it back, but got here in time to do the update. I'll let Peter do the general update of the fire department and the report. I just wanted to echo a couple things. First one is that the storm that was talked about earlier, fire department alone, I think did just shy of 100 calls within the course of maybe 4 hours. Typical fire call, wire down call for us is about 15 to 20 minutes at the the least amount, and usually we're there for hours. But in this particular storm, we had the bounce from call to call, working closely with PD handling a share of them, fire getting the other share, and really working together with both agencies. But our department alone did about 100 calls, most of them wires down, some tree removal, assisting DPW with, we don't typically cut trees unless it's an emergent situation and there's no wires involved, and we'll just cut enough to open a road. So we did that a few times, and everybody did a great job. Fantastic job. It was a busy few hours. Our dispatchers, amazing. The police officers on duty, the firefighters on duty did a great, outstanding job. For the fire department, we have 4 engine companies and 4 administrative cars, and everybody was doing call after call after call after call after call, including myself. And the deputy chief was out there, and everybody was doing what they could for the call. So I appreciate everybody's effort. Another call of significance that we'll talk about next month, but I'm going to bring it up this month, was the accident we had on Route 2. I've been doing this for a couple of years, 1 or 2 years. Although I've been to a lot of accidents that have had a lot of patients, this one was my first ever officially declared MCI, was a mass casualty incident. And what we do by that is when that's declared, it means that the resources we have on scene aren't enough. And the resource, and the patient's going to the hospital is going to potentially overwhelm the hospital. So our ER does a good job in the city of Greenfield. But when I arrived and I was told we had 5 patients, 3 of them red, which are critical, life-threatening injuries, and 2 of them are yellow. Usually we get a couple greens, and everybody was hurt significantly. The information that was received by our dispatch and Shelburne Control, and the efforts that our dispatch did to get the resources they needed started right away based off of the seriousness of the call was outstanding. The first arriving crew that was led by Captain Garvin did an amazing job of sizing it up. The police officers on scene, securing the incident, telling us how many patients we had on arrival, and everybody working together did a great job. We had a few mutual aid ambulances. We had 2 helicopters come in. It's a pretty significant event. I'm happy to report that everybody from that incident is alive. And when I pulled up on the scene, I didn't think that was the case, but they got all the patients identified quickly, extricated from the car and transported to the trauma center. All but 4 went to the trauma center down in Springfield, the family. Our thoughts and prayers are for them and their quick recovery. But I think our public safety agencies did a great job. It's also an opportunity we held a critical incident stress debriefing for responders that wanted to go. As I told my firefighters at our ball, which was successful a couple weeks ago or a week ago, as I told them that my priority going forward, my new priority is to take better care of our emergency responders' mental health. We do a good job taking care of other people. We don't do a good job of taking care of each other. And we've had things within the firehouse within the last year or 2 years that have really been eye-opening, and we need to do better. And so that's my goal. And so this critical incident stress, although we've had it before, is going to be something that we're going to see regular. I did add some things into the budget, and we're looking at some different avenues to do a better job of getting help to our responders. They have a lot on their shoulders. They deal with a lot all the time. It's my job to make sure that, especially my people, I'm watching out for their mental health. And that's a goal of mine, to do a better job of that moving forward. So I just wanted to segue into that. And lastly, we had another significant incident that the responders did a great job, but I really wanted to give a shout out to a particular officer. I won't name his name, but this police officer arrived on scene, and it's without a doubt in my mind, based off of the information that I've received from my responders, that his action saved a life. There was a distraught male that attempted to hurt himself. And this officer provided life-saving measures upon arrival and saved a life. And so, and then the EMTs that showed up and the medics that, everybody played a part, but everybody involved, did a great job. And I'd like to recognize not only my people, but everybody else that was involved in that. So thank you. And Pete, you want to?
Sure.
Can I just say a couple things before we move on? First, I just want to reiterate a huge thank you from the commission and the public. The storm I was traveling, I was out of state, and my wife was giving me updates, and the storm was pretty amazing. And I know you all just worked really hard. So I want to thank you personally. And the same with the accident. I mean, unfortunately, all you guys at the table here shine when something really bad like that happens, but the professionalism and the care, I can just imagine how well you took care of those folks that were trapped in those cars. So I just want to thank both the police department and the fire department for just an amazing effort. And thank you. And I also want to say that when you talk about health, both departments, the commission would like to be involved with health, because you do take care of all the residents of Greenfield, and you deserve to be taken care of also. So we would like to have some meetings based around that when you're ready.
Yeah,
So, thank you.
We also need to not forget our dispatchers.
Yes.
We in the field often don't appreciate what they're hearing on the call. And if you have an opportunity to listen to calls from the past, you will see that their job, I wouldn't want it. Because they're actually, it's tough to listen to some of the calls that they have to deal with. So when we talk about mental health, I hope it's a broad public safety conversation that includes our dispatchers as well. Thank you.
So in the, March is not over, so it's hard to give a March report. So you have a February report in front of you. So highlighted in that is two of our members went to the Boston Garden and participated in the BFit Challenge. It was a stair climb that was kind of multi-option, but they elected to do the stair climb portion. They made it to the 14th floor of the Verizon Tower, and they raised some money, and it went to the New England Firefighter Cancer Fund. Cancer, if you've been paying any attention to the latest news with the fire service, between foam and our turnout gear is laced with PFAS. And there's an incredible amount of studies and money and lawsuits that are circulating, revolving exposure to that and what the risk of cancer is based on repetitive exposure. So we, during the month of February, actually met with five total vendors that make turnout gear and evaluated what it would look like moving from our current turnout gear standard to a turnout gear that did not have PFAS in it. So far, the industry is, there's one vendor that has a complete PFAS-free package. And then the other four competitors of that spec have a mostly PFAS-free ensemble, which right now our gear is pretty good, but we'd like to work towards our next spec being something as close to PFAS-free as possible. So that they just wanted to highlight the that fund as well as that effort. February was one of the busiest Februarys on record for us. We did a total of 62 calls just in the first weekend alone, when we experienced temperatures well below zero for that weekend. We also had some struggles at our own station due to the cold, which was to be expected. And there wasn't much way around it, but we adapted and overcame. And the folks that work with our day-to-day prevention duties, mostly Captain Smith, but as well Lieutenant Kimball and Captain Cooley have been assisting with inspection, attended the mass code updates during the month of February to make sure that we're providing up-to-date code enforcement. On the next page is our payroll and hours update on overtime expended and permanent salaries. Good news for February, we only had 110 hours of overtime. So that was some much needed relief for us. And our overtime budget currently is overexpended. So that was also nice to not cause that to continue to erode. Permanent salaries are right on track for where we should be. And we're working through identifying some line items to balance out that overtime expense. And then on the back page is just a highlight of all of our response statistics. Breaks down our monthly NIFRS reporting data, which is just the run amounts per how they categorize the series of incidents. And then I highlighted some of the calls that we went on. Mostly chimney fires or related events. One was actually in a restaurant on Bank Row that was kind of involved just because of the way that the structure is broken into both a restaurant, but commercial rental space for offices as well as residential on the upper floors, and the chimney runs right up the center of the building. And the access is on a pretty good grade. So operating our tower ladder is a little bit more challenging than being on flat terrain. And of course, the access to the roof was by the ladder and a scuttle. So crew's got a little bit of a workout on that. But
If I could jump in for a second on that one. You know, we do a lot of chimney fires in the city of Greenfield. It's the first time I've ever done one in the urban center. And you know, when we take the ashes out of the chimney, we usually put them on the yard and hose them down. And it's interesting to do when there's no, grassland or whatever. There's just sidewalks. So we didn't really know what to do with the, it's just a funny story, but it was the first time ever having an urban setting where we had a chimney fire. I don't know. Thanks. Where do you put it?
yeah. I see in the agenda, it references fire station updates.
Yes. New
Would you like
fire
that now?
station updates. Would you like to give us one?
I'm happy to if you'd like to.
Absolutely.
So if anybody's driven by the site recently, the about 90-ish% of the concrete is poured. There's a little piece of a retaining wall that they're still working out now that the utility pole has been removed. So once that's complete, all of the concrete's been poured for the foundation walls. All of the steel has been erected. They're now working on the supports in the roof for the air handlers. And on my way in yesterday morning, they were having the first delivery of the steel decking for the roof. So right now, I think they're about 2.5 weeks on schedule. They're cranking away. The crew there could not be any better. We're finally starting to get into kind of more of the nitty gritty for the fire department use. We've been meeting about some technology pieces, and soon we'll be talking about furniture. We met last week to discuss potential systems for station alerting, and yeah, we're really excited to see the progress, and it's starting to look like a building. So if you have an opportunity, you can get a hold of one of us and we'd be happy to tour you around the property and get you a little better hands-on with that.
And if I could, I mentioned at the building committee meeting, I think the last one, the construction crew that has been put together for this, between the architect, the construction crew, the OPM, we meet weekly on Mondays to discuss what's going on, what's happened, and what the 2 weeks out. I couldn't be more pleased with the professionalism of the crews that we have that are putting this building together. It's quite remarkable to see how fast it's going up. You should be seeing walls within a couple weeks too. So
Very exciting. Do the commissioners have any questions? Fire department? Comments?
I just would like to thank the fire department for showing me around the other day, and I would encourage my fellow commissioners, if they haven't taken advantage of your invitation, to do that, because it really opens your eyes to see really what's happening there. And I hope everyone knows this, but there is a camera available at the site, which is a very nice feature, I feel. And there's also weekly reports that come out that you can avail yourselves of. So that I would really encourage you to do that, because it really keeps you up to date of what's happening there. And I know I have kind of special interest sometimes, but it's worth it. It's good to do that. And the people there are very accommodating. They're very willing to help you understand what's going on. So I just thank you very much for having that and making it available to us. So
anytime. One of the things we should have mentioned is we had a small beam raising ceremony where unfortunately fortunately or unfortunately, because the construction's going so quick, we couldn't put together a real proper signing ceremony. So it was something that was done within a matter of a couple days. So we weren't able to get it out to the public in time, but the committee and the firefighters, active and retired, were able to sign it. It'll be held, it was hoisted into place. It's one of the last beams that went up. And it will be visible to be seen from the apparatus floor. It won't be covered, and it will be there for the life of the station. So it was a nice little event. But I apologize to the public. We weren't able to get it out quick enough to do a full public event on it. So.
Thank you. And I didn't mean to leave out emergency services on that big thank you for the storm and the accident. So we really appreciate what you do for the city of Greenfield. All right.
So you, on the agenda, you also have overtime. I gave you my overtime report from, I wrote that in the end of December and updated it. A couple updates. Due to some creativity and some adding of staff that finally have come on board, and we should be seeing, we have a firefighter graduating Friday from the fire academy, so he'll be back on shift. I've got 2 other members that are out on leave, but by moving a couple things around, we've been able to slow it a little bit. But we are still going to be over. I did give the report to the city council. I know city council is waiting for an opportunity to see a financial order on it. But we are going to try to do what we can within our operating budget and within other means that we have to make it when we have to go to, if we have to go to city council, that it will be the smallest number that we can bring forward. The fire department has put a spending freeze, which is not uncommon for us this time of year, which basically says that you'll appreciate this, basically says that there's no purchasing of anything, and I mean anything, without the express approval of the chief. And, you know, unfortunately, it's an exercise we go through, I think, as long as I've been chief. But it is what it is. And we're doing okay. And we are going to try to come in as a balanced budget to the best that we can, but our overtime and a couple big expenditures, like we've talked about the last meeting, the generator fix and stuff, makes it challenging. But we are making some changes, some alterations, and hopefully we will not have to come back and ask for a big ask.
So you said the overtime rate for February was down a little bit. So what's the average that you've been coming in at? Do you know, this is, you had 110 hours in February, right? And that's low, that's down, correct? So what has it been like on average?
What is it supposed to be, or what does it have been?
No, just what it has been, yeah.
So we have been weeks that we're running about 10,000 a week. We budget for, I think, just shy of 2,000 a week. A lot of things have happened. We talked about the last meeting with the IOD is a killer for us. It's an absolute killer. Unfortunately, our job is a dangerous job, and unfortunately, we're going to hurt firefighters. But when a firefighter goes out in a long-term injury, like I had recently, who he's back, thank God. But firefighter goes out in a long-term injury, there's no mechanism to replace that firefighter except overtime. And so when you have a 6-person shift, we now have 2 shifts that are 7, but when we have a 6-person shift and you take 1 person out of the equation and we fill to a minimum of 5, that means every shift is getting filled. And if it's vacation season, there's 2 off by contract, that means 2 people are filling every shift. And it doesn't take time to add up very quickly. And so there are ideas out there to try to correct that. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, we will do our best to keep our firefighters safe. Unfortunately, there's always going to be injuries. It's a dangerous job.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on from the commissioners? All right, thank you, fire departments. All right, we will move on to the police department. We have Deputy Gordon and Lieutenant Dodge here and a few special guests that we're excited to talk about. So take it away.
If you go to your packet, I'll go over page by page. It's kind of my talking points on that. So one of the first things I want to discuss is how we got to our staffing levels that we're currently have right now, which is at a very low level. But if you look at the first page on 1/1/22, so that would be just over a year ago, we had a full complement of 34 officers. The officers, you have a chief, a deputy chief, then you have 2 lieutenants, you have 6 sergeants, and 6 sergeants and 5 detectives, 6 officers on every shift, and a full complement of dispatchers. Last month, by time we went through the year, we lost 6 people, and then you'll notice the darker blocks are the positions that we lost. So we lost a administrative lieutenant, 1 of the swing sergeants, 3 patrol officers, a community resource officer, and a dispatcher. On 3/1, we reorganized, and this is when we went without coverage from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. We took away that shift. And you'll notice as we restructured, we went to a chief, a deputy chief, 1 lieutenant, and 5 sergeants. Each sergeant is assigned a squad of 4 officers. And if you notice that there is not enough officers to be able to cover that midnight shift safely. So we were able to restructure and go into 10-hour shifts, and we were able to cover safely 20 hours of our day. The state police were asked to cover the other 4 hours. When we decided the next page, police calls of service for the time of day, you'll notice that the hours of between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. were significantly lower for calls of service than all of the other hours. So it just made sense that those are the hours that we would ask somebody else to cover. On the next page, you'll see that we have the calls of service for calls per day of the week. And you'll notice it's pretty level. There's a little bit less calls on a Sunday, but pretty much every other day is the same. So it wouldn't make sense to go lower on a certain day. Sometimes people say, well, can't you lower your shift on like a Wednesday? And as you can see that it's pretty level across the board for each day, just a little bit lower on Sunday, but not much lower. So what has the state police been doing since they started on March 1st? Between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., they fielded 38 calls of service. 16 of those calls were in a 4-hour period for the snowstorm. That kept them pretty busy, and we were glad to have their coverage for those times. They helped out the fire department, they helped out EMS and the DPW with their tows. They handled 7 miscellaneous calls. Those are 911 hangups, missed dials, such that really weren't substantial type of calls. They handled 2 car crashes, 2 welfare checks, 2 unwanted, 2 noise complaints, 2 suspicious activity calls, 1 domestic, 1 animal cruelty call, 1 larceny, 1 break-in and entering, which was a domestic and ended up turning into a rape, and 1 overdose call. So those calls of services just since yesterday. So that's a half a month of coverage. Obviously, it's not sustainable that we need to be able to handle our calls. We went to the council, and the council was gracious enough to approve our grant that we put in, which allows us to hire 3 officers. We also are replacing 1 officer who left for the State Police Academy, which gives us 4 openings. I'm going to introduce you to the following people who have all conditional offers of employment, which means that they're just going to the next step of our process. Right? It's pretty serious. They're being raced through as fast as they can, but they're being presented to you, and they're going to be presented to the mayor as well. There's Victor Placenta. He is currently a reserve officer. He's not a new hire for Greenfield. He already works for us. He is just going from part-time to full-time. The one issue that we have with him is that he needs an academy waiver for his full-time post certification. Typically, that's held every once a month. He was not able to get into the March meeting, but we anticipate him getting into the April meeting. But I did get a call from Executive Office of Public Safety, who is going to graciously give us an emergency meeting and get his waiver done so he can get on the streets of Greenfield as fast as possible. We also have Cameron Johnson. Cameron Johnson is a full-time post-certified officer. He needs he is full-time academy trained, ready to go, except he doesn't know how Greenfield does the things that we have in Greenfield. So he has to go through our FTO program, something that Victor has already gone through. We have Alyssa Ippolito. She is currently a dispatcher. She needs everything. She's a brand new hire. She needs to be able to go to the academy. Normally, it takes about 3 to 6 months to get a person into the academy. We pulled some strings in Boston, and they're doing us a favor to try to help us with coverage. And she is being rushed through, and she's going to the police academy in a week and a half. And that is a momentous hurdle to be able to do. She has been very busy, and Melvin Morano, he's in the same boat. I'm going to have them introduce themselves as well. We thought he was going to be going to the Boylston Academy, which is at the end of April, which in of itself is quite a feat to be able to get somebody in that. But we got indications today that he possibly could also go into the Holyoke Academy in a week and a half. So we have been very, very busy trying to get these candidates going through our hiring process, doing their interviews, during their physical agility training, their medical screenings, their psychological screenings, their backgrounds, all of that and then they have to, on top of that, they have to go through all of their academy physicals and academy screenings. So that has been in the last just couple weeks. Normally it takes a couple months to do that. So they've been very busy, but I'm going to hand it over to them. We'll start with Victor and then Cameron, Alyssa, and then Melvin. If you can just introduce yourself and just let them know who you are.
Hi, my name is Victor Plachinta. I'm 35 years old. Born in Chisinau, Moldova. It's the capital of Chisinau. Started my career in law enforcement when I was early 20s. Worked at UMass as a cadet, and then did a little bit of time with DYS, and then from there went to corrections. I got 11 years working inside, and here I am. I like the job. What I have to offer as far as experience-wise, besides my work experience, I'm bilingual. I speak a few languages. I speak Moldovan, Romanian, Russian, a little bit of Latin. That's about it.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Cameron Johnson. I'm really excited to be here. I'm at kind of a sweet spot in my working life. I put in a good bit of work to get where I'm at now. Once upon a time, I worked private EMS full time. That led me into working for a fire department, a call-in per diem fire department, which was, again, amazing experience. But my whole reason to get into emergency medical service in the first place was to build my resume to one day get to where I am now. Where I am is I'm academy trained. I'm ready to work essentially. I've started working, and I'm now looking to learn basically how Greenfield operates. So my break in here is essentially learning the way that Greenfield does things, because everywhere is different. I don't currently live in Greenfield, but I grew up a number of years living in Greenfield when I was a child. So I'm familiar with Greenfield as a town, and I'm familiar with law enforcement as a field, somewhat new. But I want to merge those familiarities and bring myself up to date on what policing in Greenfield looks like right now.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Ippolito. Like explained a couple times, I currently dispatch for Greenfield PD. I have since October. So it's about 6 months under my belt. I have talked to numerous people in the community, where they live, who they are, who they're related to, common issues that they deal with. I'm the first person that they talk to when they call for the police. So I know how a lot of people handle stress. I graduated from Westfield State in 2021. I double majored in criminal justice and political science. Education is really important to me. Training is really important to me. So right after high school, I went straight to college to get a degree. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I was very excited to get a job dispatching. I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn about the town, learn about the people, and learn about the department. I love every officer that I work with, and I'm very excited to work in this town. I did grow up in Western Mass, so I'm pretty familiar with the area, although dispatching has definitely helped me learn all the streets, all the addresses. And so I'm very excited to work in Greenfield and work with the community on a face-to-face level.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Good afternoon. My name is Melvin Moreno. I'm 27 years old. I graduated from Turner's Falls High School. I'm currently employed at Amherst College and work for the Student Affairs Department. I am also bilingual. I speak both English and Spanish. I'm excited for this opportunity and to serve the community of Greenfield.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for them so we can get them off the hot seat?
Sure. I'd like to make a statement first. I think it's important to have the public understand a little bit of the process. So I'm a stickler for process and procedures. So there is a recruitment and selection process that the chief and the deputy went over with me before the hiring process started. So I was pleased to review that process. And one part of that process was to put an interview committee together. So there was an interview committee formed, and it did include one member from the Public Safety Commission. I did ask at the time, Ed wasn't on the Public Safety Commission. I did ask the other commissioners if they would want to do it. And initially, David Lanoy was going to be on the commission, and some things came up in his schedule. So I substituted, and I want to say that it was real impressive. I want to thank Lieutenant Dodge for the organization. We interviewed 14 candidates. We all graded them separately. There also Penny Ricketts was on the interview committee along with 3 other employees of the police department. And we asked them all the same questions, and we graded them independently from one another. And I want to say that, when I graded Cameron and Alyssa and Melvin, I think you guys had high grades for me. I know you did. And I'm really excited for your future. And for all 4 of you, I know you didn't go through the same interview process, Victor, but I'm excited you're coming on full time. But for the youngsters, you are the future of Greenfield Police. I think, Alyssa, you said that. You asked us questions and you said, what do you expect from me? And you turned around to some of the older guys in the room, and there was some chuckles, but I mean, you 4 are the future of Greenfield. And I'm looking forward to tracking your progress closely and asking the deputy and Todd where you guys are at. And, the Public Safety Commission is open to you. If you have any questions, you have any concerns, you don't need to go through your department. You can come right to us, ask us questions, but we look forward to working with you in the future. And good luck in the academy. And Cameron, you're starting right off. So, best of luck to you. I was excited to meet you. And Victor, you're going to do great too. So thank you. And I'll open it up to the other commissioners.
Well, my name is Rick Clark, and I congratulate you for getting this far along in your careers and joining Greenfield Public Safety. I think it's a very important job we have here to be involved in your future. And I encourage you, much as David has said, I'm speaking for all of us, but I think we all feel the same way, that you are welcome to approach us at any time. I see that as an important role that we have to play in the community. And so I know I've been here 13 years doing this, and I'm about ready to get through. So you won't see me as much, but really, it's one of those things is that what you put into the job, you take away a lot more from it. So I know in my role that I've done over the year, I've been involved in hiring of many of our public safety people. And it's really been a very rewarding task for me. And I can tell you to this day that people respect me for doing it, but they also gained a lot of respect for us from it. So I think the role we play here is very important. And we all look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome and congratulations to all four of you. I love the diversity of the group. And there are two people there that I've interacted with. Victor, I think it was probably quite a long time ago that you sat in a classroom where I was teaching, and not to embarrass you, but I have to share the story of the day that you came up and talked about how important it was to be respectful to other people. Remember that? Yeah, I remember it very well. We had a pretty lively discussion that day. And so you wanted to talk about the need for respect and mutual respect and courtesy. And I'm also happy to know that you experienced the detention side, and that's been my career. I think it's so important to have that because it gives you a broader understanding of some of the challenges we face in criminal justice. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you. Those that I do not know, I appreciate your candor and willingness to serve in our community. You're coming into criminal justice in a time, I think, when it's fair to say there are an awful lot of opinions out there about what we should do and what we don't do well, and what we do, and a whole host of things. And I think you bring a lot to the table. And finally, Cameron, we both interacted at GCC as well. Happy to see you walking in. I'm happy that we have you. It's a loss to whoever doesn't have you, but these days, we're going to take the wins. One of the things that I think is so important for us to do, aside from being willing to be courteous, is to understand how difficult it is to police in a democracy. It's really easy to police in a police state. In a country that is racially diverse and where people have rights, social control is a very delicate and difficult thing. And I don't think I'm overstepping to suggest that all first responders from all the fields that are here, do some of the most difficult jobs that we could imagine that our citizens sometimes take for granted and completely depend on. Policing obviously stands out because of the authority that you have over individual citizens. And that can't be taken lightly. One of the favorite lectures that I give, and I'm not trying to lecture you, is to talk about Sir Robert Peel's 9 principles of policing. He had to convince a skeptical parliament in 1829 to create a police force. And they were skeptical because they were concerned about too much power. And he was able to convince them by talking to them about what famously became his 9 principles. So I'm hoping before you leave, you take a copy of those because I brought them with me. I wish you luck. I wish you safety. And As I echo the words of my fellow commissioners, we're available. Some of you know our addresses very well already, and if you don't, you can find us if you need to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. Is there a test after, Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't have to take it
Okay, good.
because you weren't at the last meeting.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. A little bit about myself. I'm a retired deputy fire chief from Greenfield. So I used to run with the boys with the red trucks and make a lot of noise and get in everybody's way. So I think the one thing that I want to pass along to you folks is in reaching deputy chief, I took many promotional exams, and there was always this one business out of the business book that you just kind of skipped over and said, nobody's ever going to ask me this on a test. I don't have to remember this part. And it was looking at your job as providing a business, that you were working in a business and you were providing a service. It didn't stick with me to the LA fire chief in one of the professional development courses that I went to, said, I pass this along to every recruit that graduates. Remember that we provide a service. We actually provide a business for people. We're in business of providing that service. If the people are unhappy with us, they don't like the service that we're providing, they don't fund us, they don't come back, and we're out of business. I went, wow, maybe I should have paid attention to that in the book, because it was rather in depth. He went on, he explained it in much greater length than I did. And I don't want to bore you folks, because I know you want to get out of those seats and get out of here. But just remember, we do provide a service, and we are the taxpayers, visitors, and everybody in the city that comes into Greenfield are our customers, and we need to provide them with the very best service that we can provide to them. And we just need to kind of remember that, especially today. Today we live in a much tougher world. So I wish you folks luck. You all sound like great candidates. I'm kind of upset that I didn't make the, I sat through many of interview processes with the chief and doing promotionals for the fire department and other municipalities for fire, but it would have been exciting to sit down with you folks. So wish you luck.
The last thing I'd like to say is just, if you have questions, ask them. Ask them to your superiors, ask them to us. Don't be afraid. If you don't understand something, ask. I know it's kind of, you're new and there's a lot you're going to digest, but just keep asking questions. And we're really looking forward to, representing Greenfield. So thank you for your time.
I just want to point out that although we got some outstanding candidates, it's getting tougher and tougher to find such candidates in this field. In the past, we used to be able to find people that went out and got the Reserve Academy, applied themselves, had some experience, usually with a smaller town, or we hired them ourselves as reserves, and were able to test them and then use them until they went to the academy. Well, with Post and the new requirements as Post, we're unable to do that. And candidates are unable to go to get that training as well. And I believe it was Moreno who said in his interview that he wanted to get that Reserve Academy, and he just couldn't make that particular one. And after that, they shut the whole system down, and he wasn't able to get that, which it makes it difficult for people that have absolutely no experience and no training to get these types of jobs, which only allows us for education purposes to look at college graduates, which is not necessarily fair or equitable. We think that being able to take people straight off the street leads us to more diverse populations and recruiting more diverse cultures into our department. It costs a little bit more money. In the past, we've able to hire people that has come straight out of the academy, and having Cameron with us is a huge home run. That's going to save the town approximately about $50,000. But in the reverse, it costs the town about $50,000 per academy, and we're sending 2 to the academy. It's very expensive. By the time you get through payroll, equipment, and tuition for the academy. But like I said, being able to take people in different communities and recruit people that don't have any experience in law enforcement allows us to mold them into the type of Greenfield officer that we want, rather than somebody that brings baggage with them from other communities. So we're very excited to be able to see that. One last chance for any questions, and then I'm going to ask you to support our list of candidates so they can be forwarded to the mayor.
Yes, I just want to ask if Mayor Roxanne Weida Gardner wanted to say anything or to the new candidates, or say at least hi, Mayor?
I am here and delighted to say hello to each and every one of you, Victor, Cameron, help me out, Michelle Ippolito? Alyssa.
What's up?
Lisa, thank you. And Mr. Moreno. I am delighted that each and every one of you are here and joining the police force. You bring such a wide array of experience. I am really looking forward to you growing and becoming really excellent police officers for the city of Greenfield. I know you will. David is right. You are our future. And that is very, very important to us, to have people of your quality and your ability. So thank you for choosing Greenfield, and we hope we do you right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mayor.
So the next step in the process is I reviewed these candidates with the chief of police, who are recommending them to be hired with the mayor. In order to do that and follow our policy, we have to present them to you, and then you either affirm or deny that recommendation.
Go ahead if you have something to say.
Deputy, I just have one question related. Oh, actually, I have two. What exactly is the Holyoke facility?
That's a great question. Typically, in days past, we went to what's called the Agawam Police Academy. That's where I went to, and you would go to Agawam, and it was an old schoolhouse, and it was dilapidated. So it changed over to Stick. At the they had a building at Stick, and that would be the Western Mass Police Academy. They have changed it now to a new building in Holyoke, right by the mall. It's a beautiful facility, a multi-million-dollar building, beautiful gym, and this is going to be the first new MPOC, which is Mass Police Officer Candidate School, in the new facility. So they're very lucky, because all the other buildings were about the oldest buildings that you could find in the state and had all kinds of problems, and this is not.
Well, that's great. And so these folks are part of that COPS grant. Is that correct?
Victor is a replacement for Brendan Smith, who went to the state police, and the other three are from the COPS grant.
Okay. Did you have something to add? Are you all set? Okay.
No, are you ready? Do you want a motion?
Yes, I just wanted to state first that in the charter, if any of the commissioners had an issue or a concern about the candidates, they could write the mayor and the police department a letter stating that. But I think if it doesn't sound like we're going to have issues, I'm not sure, but we could take a motion and then a second, and we could make a vote on approving the 4 candidates. If someone wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we affirm all 4 candidates as a positive recommendation to the mayor.
Second.
Okay, we can have discussion if we need to. Before we vote, is there any discussion? All right, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Commissioner Clark.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Jarvis.
Yes.
Commissioner Lanoy.
Yes.
And myself, Dave Moscaratolo, I say yes. So we're moving forward. I appreciate your time. Thank you and good luck. All right, we're going to continue, I think.
I got more for my report. That was just part one. Yep.
All right, we're going to continue. That was great. Go ahead, Deputy.
So as I said, with those 4 officers, one of them, we're waiting for the waiver. We're anticipating getting that waiver next week. He's already trained and we're going to be able to put him on the street, full officer with nothing else immediately. So by April 1st, I would assume that he would be on the street. Cameron Johnson will be able to be through the town's process by April 6th, I believe, if that's a Monday. And then he will have to go through FTO training. So he actually won't be seen on the road by himself for anywhere between 4 and 12 weeks, depending on the speed of his training. Since he already went through the academy and he already went through an FTO process with another department, we anticipate that that training is going to be a little bit faster than a typical candidate. I would expect to see him on the road the first week of May, at the latest, the end of May. The other 2 you probably won't see on the road for about a year, maybe next January, before they go on. Having those extra people, especially Victor and Cameron, able to supplement our shifts, we're looking at possibilities of returning to the 24-hour patrol. I'm not at liberty to discuss it because we have to talk to the state police, because there's other types of things that we have to put in place to be able to make sure that we have that. But we have talked to the mayor about possible plans. That we have talked, the chief of police is involved and he's also talked. And we hope to have something settled in the next week or so. So it's a positive to see them being able to be utilized as fast as possible. But I'm not able to tell you exactly when we'll be able to go back to those 24-hour patrols at this time. But we're looking at possibilities. The second part of my presentation, actually, we usually give in January, which is the year-end review. And if you remember on the February meeting, I wasn't prepared. I only got a couple minutes notice to be able to get that to you. So I was going to present it in the February meeting, but that was canceled. So I have it in March. As you know from your emails, I've given you voluminous amount of reports. I give you year-end reporting, which was rather large. I have all the raw data of the data that I'm going to go. You all got that in your emails. I also give you the information from the month previous. So I go through all of our statistics for February to give at the March meeting. So you have gotten a year end for 2022, the month end for January, and the month end for February, which is just a ton of information. So I'm going to be skipping over a lot of that. I probably give you maybe like 500 pages of information by now through your emails. But we're going to just kind of go over the highlights, especially the year-end review. So in 2023 citations, if you notice that in the first chart, which is the events, is the amount of crashes that we've had versus the amount of traffic stops that we had. And you can see the amount of automobile crashes is nearly 800. I don't have the raw data. Like I said, I've given it to you in an email. And the amount of traffic stops that Greenfield Police Department has had in 2020, it says 2023, but I'm sorry, it's 2022, was approximately 1,400 traffic stops. The results of those traffic stops is the next chart. As you can see, out of the 1,400 stops, over 1,000 of them were given verbal warnings. That's really the crux of our traffic enforcement. It's really the education of the public that we feel is important. So we pull a car over and we educate the driver that, you know, in this area, a lot of people, they speed by accident. They're not paying attention. They didn't know what the speed limit was on that road, so they get a verbal warning. The next chart that we have is written warnings. And as you can see, approximately 800 of those stops are written warnings. And you have to forgive me. The first chart where I said it was 1,400, those are 1,400 citations and not necessarily just traffic stops. The verbal warnings are the traffic stops. So on top of those citations are the almost 1,100 traffic stops. So there was about a little over 800 written warnings. So again, here we are at nearly 2,000 warnings that we've issued throughout the year in 2022. The very least amount of traffic enforcement that Greenfield Police Department does is the actual giving out a fine of the traffic citation. Like I said, normally 90% of the people that we pull over did it accidentally, and they just needed to be reminded that in this street that you shouldn't go so fast, or you need to really stop at that traffic stop. I'm at that stop sign. And it's a very minuscule number. And I don't remember, because I came up with these a couple months ago, what that actual number is, but we're talking in the tens of maybe hundreds, very few, not even 100, because it's not even halfway up the chart. So very few amount of written citations. Some come out with arrests. That may be a warrant arrest. It may be driving without a license arrest. It might be alcohol involved arrest. And then criminal applications would be what's called a summons. So as you can see with our citation report, is that most of our traffic stops are the education aspect of that. The next sheet that we have is called traffic trends. And this is basically what's going on between traffic, the correlation between citations. Again, it's not the verbal warnings, it's citations. Versus crashes and traffic stops. So as you can see, in 2018, we had about 2,000 traffic stops, and we had just under about 900 crashes. In 2019, we had about 1,500 traffic stops, and we had a little increase. So we had a decrease of traffic enforcement and an increase to about 1,000 traffic accidents. In 2020, we had a continuing decrease. Of course, that was pandemic year, of citations to about, give or take 1,000 citations, a little bit more traffic stops and citations on that. And as people went into their homes, there was less traffic stops. So we had about 750 traffic stops. 2021, people started coming out of the house a little bit more, traffic accidents increased, and the traffic enforcement increased slightly as well. And 2022, which was last year, we had a budget crisis and we didn't have as many officers on the road. So you don't see the citations as high as they were in the past. There's traffic citations came up just slightly, and our traffic enforcement came up just slightly. We have a bias-free policing policy, and part of that policy is to be able to look at citation trends as it comes to racial makeup of the city. As you can see, in 2018, nearly 90% of our citations were given to the people that identify as white, and approximately 5% of those citations were given to people that identified as Hispanic. Just slightly, about 4% of the citations were given to people that identified as Black, and about 1%, less than 1%, were given to people that identified as Asian. No Middle Eastern citations were issued. In 2019, that almost the exact same trend happened. 2020, of course, there was a little bit less accidents, but the percentages were pretty close to what they were, with a little bit of reduction in the white population, a little bit of increase in the Hispanic population. In 2021, we then went back up to, I'm surprised 2022 isn't here. I must have forgot to put that on the chart. I apologize about that. Oh, I'm going to talk about it next page. 2021, we went back up to approximately 88% of the people that were being issued citation were white. Hispanics were approximately 9%. Black was approximately 4%, and Asian was still under 1%. On the next page, you'll see the trends for the 2022s that came out. And in 2022, 86.1% of our citations were issued to people identified as white. As you can see, this chart's a little bit more clear about exactly where those 80 percentiles were laid out. And you'll see in 2018, it was 88%. In 2019, it was 87%. 2020, it was approximately 83%. 2021, it was a little over 86%. And 2022, it was 86.1%. Asian is approximately 1.7% in 2022. You can see the other years as they progressed. In 2022, 2.8%. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Again, it was 2 months ago I wrote this. The census estimates is what's on the top. So the census estimate is 86.1, and we wrote approximately in 2022, 89% to the white population. You see how that works on the top of the page. The census estimate of Greenfield is 1.7%, and we wrote approximately 0.6%. As I was going through that, I'm like, those numbers don't work the first time I read it, but so the census estimate of in Greenfield that identifies as Black is 2.8%, and our citations are about 3.8%. And the census estimate of Hispanic was 6.6%, and we wrote approximately 4.8% in 2022. As you can see, the trends go up and down depending on each category. Do you have any questions about, oh, I got one more page on the bias-free policing citation. Oh, no, the next pages are by officers. What you're gonna see is, so the first page is Chief Haig has 0 citations. Chiefs don't usually write citations. I have 2 citations, all white operators. Lieutenant McCarthy had 5 citation, all white operators. Lieutenant Dodge had no citations. Typically, your administration staff is not charged with doing traffic patrol, so that's why those citations would be low. The next page is our sergeants. Sergeants do a little bit more on the road duties than administrators. So they have a little bit more citations, but their expectation is that they don't write citations and do traffic. That is really the patrol officer's job. And so most of these are probably car accidents that the sergeants responded to. So you see that Sergeant Rice, who's retired now, had 8 citations that were issued to white operators, 1 citation to a Black operator, 1 citation to a Hispanic. Sergeant Haskins had 4 citations written to white, no citations written to Black operators, and 1 citation to Hispanic. Sergeant Clark has 7 white operators, no other races were issued citations. Sergeant Green issued no citations. He's in charge of the Detective Bureau. So detectives typically don't do traffic as well. Sergeant Cloutier had 5 white operators and no Black operators and 1 Hispanic. Sergeant Rowell didn't write any citations in 2022. He's in charge of the midnight shift. So I can go through this if you want per officer. It's up to you, or you can just browse through it. But as you can, all the citation stats are there per officer. What would you like me to do?
We're good? Okay.
Okay, so
We'll digest it.
I'm sorry,
We'll
you'll
review
digest
it.
Yep,
and-
that's exactly what I expected for you to do. So another category that we look at is for bias-free policing is our arrest data. So our total arrests in 2022 was 336 arrests. Now, in years past, some people have seen our arrests were up to 800. Sometimes in years past, they were 1,200. And I just want to explain that is that about 6 or 7 years ago, we changed the way we did statistics. So we used to call any summons, we used to call arrest. We have then, about 6 or 7 years ago, we more accurately call it summons, and arrests are actually people that are taken into custody. So it appears that our arrests have dropped significantly over that period, but they have dropped, but not as significant as it looks, because most of those were summonses at the time. And so in 2022, we had 336 arrests, and approximately 88% of those arrests were white, about 11% were Black, and less than 1% were Asian. And about 71% were male, about 28% were female, and I believe we had one arrest that was identified as non-binary, and it's not listed on the chart because it's such a small number that just didn't appear on the chart. And the next page is same with citation is per officer. And that should bring you all the way to towards the back when we're talking about co-response. If you have any questions about arrests before we get to co-response. Co-response is the purpose of co-response is to divert people that used to go to either jail or the hospitals away from jails and hospitals. So the intent of that grant is to lower the amount of arrests, which there really wasn't very many arrests to begin with of people that had mental health. Most of them were placed in custody and brought to the hospital for forced hospitalization. In 2022, under the co-response grant, we had approximately 130 evaluations. And out of that 130 evaluations, approximately 55% were diverted and didn't need to go to the emergency room. That frees up the ambulance, it frees up the emergency room. But it does make our job a little harder, and it takes us a little bit longer to be on scene, but it frees up a lot of resources that the town would expend in people that in the past were just thrown in an ambulance and gone to the hospital and then released back into the community, and they were on a vicious cycle. And so what we do with the co-responder is we bring a clinician in the cruiser with us to go on scene to make an evaluation rather than at the hospital, to make an evaluation at the person's house where they're more comfortable. And that has shown a 55% rate of diversion, which is highly successful. And then you'll see on the next page, the amount of diversion results for involuntary commitments. So in the past, we had, in 2018, we had approximately 170 involuntary committals. Those are called Section 12s in our world. Those are people that are forced to go to the hospital. 2019, we had approximately 140, probably 145. 2022, we had approximately 150. 2021, we had approximately 165. And then the grant happened and our co-responder came in and we dropped suddenly down to approximately 80. So you can see the 50 or more % of diversion. So that means that many more people weren't forced to go to the hospital. And then another year-end report that we have is use of force. Matter of fact, do you want to talk about the Friends and use of force? And you did the report. Sure, yeah. So I put together the report last month, I believe, which was actually interesting. It was a learning experience for me. It's the first time I actually compiled that particular report. And what I noticed, this sort of segues from where we're talking about, you know, the mental health diversion stuff, was I found that in extremely high percentages of the instances where we use force were on Section 12s. So if we can continue with our co-response and continue to build on that co-response model, I'm confident our use of force numbers are going to come down dramatically. That was noted in the report. But as you can see, if you look at that particular graph from 18, 19, 20, it looks great. There wasn't a lot of use of force incidents. And going into 2021, they changed that. So Post, you've heard a lot about Post. Post has now injected changes into our use of force reporting, which requires us to report for much lower levels. I mean, in some cases down to verbal. So clearly when the incidents at a lower level need to be reported now and didn't have to before, we got a lot more incidents. What I did see with our use of force trends is very little use of tasers, very few, maybe 1 or 2 OC, the pepper spray. Most of our physical use of force is our escorts are literally like maybe an arm bar. On a couple, maybe there was an actual, it resulted in a takedown. But the vast majority are just simply, they had to put hands on outside of what would be compliant handcuffing. So maybe they had to push them a little bit. Maybe they had to help them into a car a little bit, but now they have to report on that. We did not have to before. So it looks like it skyrocketed, and it did. So it did because we have to report on far more criteria than we once did, so.
One other part of the reporting is that in the past, you had to report on per incident. Now you have to report per officer. So and you can notice here in the blue bars, you have the total use of force incidents, but you'll notice that the red bar, which is your hands-on tactics, is higher than the use of force incidences because there was more than one officer involved in that use of force. So in that particular, it could be 2 or 3 officers using force on one incident. So the incidences don't match the amount of use of force with the officers.
I'm also noting, just for clarity on this graph, you'll see what looks like contrary to what I said in terms of taser use. Taser use, we have to report when they just pull it out of their holster. So it wasn't a taser deployment, but it's documented here as a taser incident. I think, like I said, there was 1 or 2 where tasers were actually used. The rest of them they just pulled them out, hoping for voluntary compliance, and achieved that compliance. So.
In the past, you would have to report only when you deployed the taser and you pulled the trigger. Like he said, now anytime it's used as a threat to overcome violence towards officers, it's regarded as a use of force. I do agree that is a much better way of doing it. It just makes the statistics look odd because it looks like it's a lot more than it was in years past. And I just want to reemphasize, every department in the state has these new requirements. Every department in the state has these same explanations of why that looks like it does. And also the bias-free report and the use of force report was sent to you, and it has a lot more information in those reports. And they're also made public to the people on websites. So if anybody in the public wants to be able to see the statistics that I just talked about, you can go to the new City of Greenfield website and go to the police department, and those reports that I just explained are all in there for anybody to see. And the third category that we have to do an annual report on is pursuits. And that is the last page of your packet. And as you can see, in 2018, we had 1 pursuit. 2019 and 20, we had no pursuits. 2021, everybody came out of the house apparently, and there was pursuits. We had 8 pursuits, which is off of our scales. But in 2022, that would be 2 pursuits in an entire year that Greenfield Police Department was involved. We don't get involved in pursuits as much as people think that we get involved in pursuits. So like I said, I sent you probably over 500 pages of information in your emails. I read that at your leisure. But I wanted to highlight those 2 reports because they are on the city's website, and you should be intimately familiar with those.
Do any of the commissioners have questions?
I just have one question on the pursuits. Would those include pursuits that came into town from out of town?
As long as we were involved in them.
Okay.
So if the state police had a pursuit that went through town and Greenfield police had no part of it, like it just went down the highway, it would not be a reportable pursuit. If a Greenfield officer was engaged in the pursuit, then we would have had indicated that.
And just to clarify, on those 2 and 22, 1 was in fact that. One of our units joined a state police pursuit.
Right.
The other one was initiated by Greenfield and ended in Greenfield.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple comments on all this reporting you have to do. I'm kind of in that boat in my life. So I took a deep dive into this police reform bill. And I think as a commission, we're going to be talking a lot about it. And I think it's important to have dialogue. But, you know, just in terms of the breadth and scope, it's 225 pages, 119 sections. It's a monumental piece of legislation. But just to take it to the local level, you talked about lack of reserve and intermittent training as a jumping board to get people hired. So I think it's important for the citizens to know that, particularly in Western Mass, we lobbied hard but unsuccessfully to make people understand that reserve and intermittent was a backbone of policing in our communities. And so Post adopted one standard. You know, I'm not sure I agree with it. I understand why they did it. But that puts a financial burden on the community, as you talked about the cost of training. And the other thing is, and I don't know if you can do it yet, but I think in terms of budget preparation, you know, every time a law is passed, it creates a mandate. The mandate is usually resource intensive. No problem with the reporting, because I think it's great for us to be able to demonstrate to the citizens what it is we do. But time and effort has to be expended for you to do it. And so at some point, I think it's important to capture a number associated with that, because that's going to be part of how we, we speak to our legislative leaders about that. The mayor speaks to the legislature, and how you prepare a budget. There were so many unknowns in public safety, and we all know that and accept that. Emergencies happen, overtime accrues, injured people happen because it's dangerous. But I really think it's important for us to start to look at ways that we can quantify those costs. The other thing I want to ask you, and I don't think it's applicable in the communities yet, but do you have any experience or involvement with PFML, which is private personal family medical leave? I think it's just at the state level at this point. PFML. Okay, so I don't know if that'll ever be applied to the cities and towns. It's very costly. And state agencies are really having a problem dealing with it, because other than all the other reasons why somebody may be out of work, this program, which is a positive program, personal family medical leave time, but it's out of the control of agencies to decide whether or not that's going to be allowed. It's done at the state level. So I'm not sure it'll come to the communities, but that's something, yes.
I was just going to offer a quick comment on that. On the municipal level, that's a local option for the city to adopt.
So, okay.
As of right now, they have not.
Okay. So
the only benefit is the federal FMLA. And the Massachusetts Parental Leave Act, which is similar, but not the same as the.
Right. So I think, those are horizon issues that we have to really start to front load and talk about, because as those programs come on board, they do good, but they also put an extreme burden on staffing, particularly in a public safety model. And just the last comment I wanted to make is I'm a big fan of co-responding, and I wanted to know whether it's your intention to memorialize that as a budget item going forward, or to expand it.
Yes, we want to expand, especially CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team. We had a 2-member team to be able to do that. One of those officers left for Irving, and we're down to 1, and we're about to utilize that person to help cover shifts. So we want to continue to have that. It's funded by a grant. We're hoping to run that grant until the grant's there no more, and then we'll have to talk to the mayor about making it a permanent solution. I think it has changed the culture of the police department. Our officers are much more educated in behavioral health, and have much more empathy towards the situations, where before, like I said, you just used to throw somebody in the ambulance and say it's the hospital's problem. Our officers don't do that anymore. The culture has changed in our department, and we have a much more empathetic police department towards the needs of people that have behavioral health emergencies. One of the things I want to point out about you talking about Post and the Reserve and Intermittent Academy is that it's equivalent in the fire field as if the state all of a sudden one day just decided that all call force firefighters, all volunteer firefighters would have to go to the full-time firefighting academy. If that happened in Western Mass, pretty much every fire department would close their doors. And you're seeing that happen now with smaller departments. You're already seeing departments combine. Departments can't sustain a police department because they can't get the training. Where in smaller departments, a lot of officers are volunteers. They may be retired and they went to the Reserve Academy and they're just like a volunteer firefighter, or they're a younger member of their community and they want to get their toes, in the water and be able to see what it's like. And those communities absolutely 100% rely on part-time reserve intermittent officers. And to take that away from them is devastating, and it's going to destroy policing in Western Mass the way it was. Now, some people are like, well, yes, it's going to destroy one, but bring in a better. And I don't disagree with that, but to do it as fast as they did without having a transitional period to make that happen, or they have a very small transitional period, is affecting our neighboring communities more than it's affecting us, but it's also affecting us. Because right now, if those 4 candidates had at least the Reserve Academy, all 4 of them would be on the street right away. And I would pace them into the academy one at a time, so it wouldn't affect us as much. So it does affect Greenfield, but we have to work through it. It's what the people want. It's through the representatives, and it's something that we'll just have to adapt to and work on, but it definitely is affecting us.
Yeah, not to belabor it, because I know we're going to talk about it going forward. I just want to say that I think it's obligatory on our part to educate the public about what we've ended up with. A lot of good in the bill, a lot of things that we don't know how they're going to pan out. Collateral consequences can be difficult to deal with, so I appreciate your comments. So thank you for this, and that's a great report. Thank you.
I just had one question. You talked about you having to report more criteria, so some of the figures are up. Is there documentation or a list on what you have to report? Is that in the post documentation?
Do you have that?
Can you
We can
can you
get you
talk to that or supply us information? You had mentioned like,
That was in
the
the police-
tasers, you can't, even if you pull it out and you don't use it, you have to report that. So I'm mostly talking about physical.
So that was part of the 2018 police reform bill.
Okay.
Not post, which is in 2020. And I could get it for you. I'd have to look it up and find the whole bill, but it would have that in there. And the bills are huge. So, we're giving a training, a chief's training that breaks this stuff apart and tells us, okay, this is what you have to do, and this is how we're going to report things, which across the state is all being reported the same with every agency. And before it would be, okay, well, this agency reported it this way and this agency reported it that way, and it wasn't consistent. So since 2018, you've had more consistent reporting requirements, and we're also accredited. So part of this is also through the accreditation, bias-free police reporting, use of force reporting, and pursuit reporting is all through accreditation as well. Post is more or less adopted that as a criteria for a certified department. We're above a certified department, we're accredited department.
I think one of my questions was, it says physical. So I'm interested in what that means in other definitions on what physical means. Handcuffing, you mentioned a few things. Is there a list that you could put together? Could we get a better understanding? Physical is an important subject to me, so I'd like to know a little bit more about that. It doesn't have to be tonight. It can be in the future, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
The definition simply for physical is just any exertion required by the officer to gain compliance beyond compliant handcuffing. So compliant handcuffing is just when you say, listen, turn around. They turn around. I walk up, put your hand behind your back, I put a handcuff on. If they in any way, shape, or form resist that, and I have to physically pull your arm behind your back, That's physical. And again, the vast majority of what we reported as physical were just that. Or now you need to walk to the car because we have to put you in the car. No. So they push them along and they push them into a car. So
Into the backseat.
to transport them to the station for booking. That physical is any exertion by the officer beyond compliant handcuffing.
So do we keep a detail on what the physical is?
I keep notes on a spreadsheet.
On what,
Yeah.
how many,
The officers on every use of force report say exactly, was it a wrist lock? Was it an arm bar? Was it a takedown? That's what comes under physical.
We
Escort-
supplied you with the raw data that's in your emails.
okay, I'll take a look at that. I might have some
The
further
use of force
questions.
reporting for the public it also has that raw data on it and that's available on the website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point. So the bill that the deputy is referring to that bill is actually called the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 2018, Chapter 69 of the action resolves of that year. That piece of legislation is actually larger than the police reform bill. I have access to an outline of that. So before anybody, I could provide that to the commission. It's very comprehensive. And then again, police reform is a separate bill.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
I've taken quite a bit of time for this report, so.
Well, we thank you for this. And we'll study it. There'll be probably some follow-up questions, but thank you for all the reports. We will move on. Next is the commissioner's questions, input, and new topics. I have down here first, 2024 budget. Is there anything that the deputy or the chief want to update us on with respect to the budgets? I think the mayor has left the meeting, but do you have anything that you want to update the commission on? You don't have to. It's just
I can start if you want. Right now, we're waiting for the mayor's recommended budget to the town council.
Yeah.
So we're eagerly anticipating that, and we certainly hope that the town council takes the recommendation of the mayor for whatever budget she puts forth for the police department. I'm sure he has the same way with the fire department.
I know that we were, because of the lack of a commission a while ago, I don't want to say we missed the boat on reviewing the budget, but we didn't follow, the process was a little bit changed. So we do have it, but it's moved forward before we could regroup. And that's why I just want to ask the questions. Chief?
So we submitted our budget and we're going through that review process. The fire department put in a pretty significant ask for an increase to get our shift strength, not our administrative strength, but our shift strength back to 100%. Did not include the deputy chief. It was a hefty ask to hire those firefighters. In addition, we had some priorities like health and wellness, medical evaluations of our more senior firefighters. That's above and beyond what the local their own provider would provide. Our insurance covers so much, but the stuff that they need to look for firefighters costs money that's out of pocket. And so we're trying to develop a program that we're successful in meeting the requirements of NFPA. That allows us to apply for grants to hire firefighters, which we've been unsuccessful, partly because we don't have a medical evaluation program. So these were pretty significant increases to add 3 firefighters and some other components, and the overall ask was hefty at 15%. Obviously, with the climate of the budget and everybody asking for more and needing more staff, the mayor has come back out with a request to help her get a budget so it comes in because you can't overspend it and you can't do a budget that requests more money than you actually have. So we've been asked to reduce that quite a bit. I don't have the answer for that. We're looking at it very closely. We're working on it this week, but we are looking at reducing our ask significantly.
Do the commissioners have any questions on the budget?
I just have one question, Chief Strand. Was I correct when I said that you did get approval for a new ambulance?
Great question. So, this is a lot of catch up because we haven't had a meeting in a while, but we did put a few requests in for capital. A couple of them, one or two were denied. And then the big one was the request for a new ambulance out of the ordinary or the city budget. And I wasn't going to do that because we wanted to stagger it a little bit, but we were informed that vehicle replacement, whether it's a fire truck or even a simple car, but an ambulance specifically, is a minimum of 2 years out. So I put the ask in now, knowing that next fiscal year, the ambulance isn't going to be delivered. We'll be lucky to see it in the following fiscal year. And so we're trying, that's what we have to do for vehicles now, is we can't just go in, ask for a vehicle, order it and have it delivered with 6 months like we used to. We have to plan years out. And so that's why the ambulance is up now, because next year capital request is a major ask. And that is to replace the 25-year-old ladder truck, which today is about $2 million. And so planning this out in steps, we've done a great job, and the mayor has been absolutely supportive in the replacement of our fleet, and city council has been great and supportive of replacing our fleet. Long overdue, but we're catching up. But this is a big ask for the ambulance, and it's early because we're not going to see it for a long period of time out. So long answer, but hope that helped.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move on. Next up is a discussion about public complaints in the policies. It's what I want to say first is myself as the chair, I believe the public complaint policies are critical for us to gain trust in the community and amongst each other. And I want to thank both the police and fire department for sending us their new policies and procedures. We obviously can't talk about detail tonight. We haven't reviewed the police. The fire one is quite lengthy. I'm sorry, we've just received the fire. We've had the police, but they're both new policies. But I think this is a very important subject for all of us. And also what's in the charter with respect to what the Public Safety Commission is responsible for. I was sent by a council member a draft of new asks from the state with respect to changing the Public Safety Commission responsibilities. We have them here. I shared them with the other commissioners. And this obviously isn't going to be the last conversation we have based around this. There's a lot of information, but tonight is a good start for the commission to talk amongst themselves about our responsibilities. So I want to open up the floor to that, to the other commissioners. So if I could take the lead if you'd like. I think one of the confusing parts to me is that complaints can come in from multiple ways, from the departments to us. Our charter says if we receive a complaint, we'll forward them on to the chiefs, which is fine. But complaints can come by phone calls to the departments. They can come by emails. I know there's applications. So one of my concerns is keeping track of all the complaints, making sure they're all being addressed, making sure somebody is looking at them. I know we also have the subject of if a complaint comes in about one of the chiefs. I've heard some history where at some points when complaints came in from the chiefs, I don't know if this is true or not, maybe the chiefs can back this up, that some of their employees would do the investigation on the chief. I don't know if that's true or not. The chief's he's shaking his head, it's not. So
I would never permit that.
yeah, I'm glad of that. Thank you. It was just, I think, some hearsay, but I wanted to clear the air on that. But I think it's important that there is a structure in place if a complaint does come in about one of the chiefs. I know the chiefs report to the mayor. She'll have some input on this, but that's also a concern that I thought we needed to review and talk about. So, you know, I know when reviewing the police, the new internal affairs document, it talked about a logbook being put together. And I think the police, Chief Strahan I haven't read yours, but I think you had mentioned there's a logbook. And I guess one of my questions is that logbook going to be available to the Public Safety Commission to look at? I hope it is. And just talk about ways we can make sure where a complaint isn't slipping through the cracks. And you're welcome to join this conversation too.
That's public document.
Yeah.
So of course it would be available for you.
Chief, did you want to speak?
I don't know if it's the same for the fire. Obviously, personnel complaints are always sealed.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a general complaint, but we typically would not provide the name of a firefighter involved in a complaint, at least initially, or why the complaint's going on. I'd have to look into that a little bit more, but that questions really hasn't been raised before for us.
So complaints from residents can be employee complaints. They can be somebody that's not attached to the department, but have to guess they would be treated differently. And there's personnel issues that have to be addressed. I know that we could, if we had to, we could go into executive session if we needed to discuss that, if it was an employee. But I
you have to afford that employee the right to
Yes.
be there to discuss it.
Yes, absolutely. But I wanted to concentrate a little bit more on public complaints, individual public complaints, to make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. If the commissioners had any questions, I mean, I certainly have questions about what our responsibilities are. Some of the language in the charter, I don't understand, I'll be honest with you. So we need to dig through that and make sure we all understand as commissioners what our responsibility is. So that's something that I would want the commissioners to weigh in on and to make sure that we understand what direction we need to take if a complaint comes in. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I want to do this. I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves without a clear understanding of what is going to roll out with post. So just in brevity, post has created, or the bill created, new divisions that didn't exist. And one of them is the Bureau of Police Standards. So you guys are probably familiar with that. But there's a lot of debate about what's reported, what isn't reported. But what I want to say in brevity is that post is heavily involved and will be heavily involved in the governance of all agencies designated as law enforcement. So all the police agencies that we are commonly aware of, all the sheriff's departments, various agencies that have certain levels of law enforcement authority. And this post division has, and if anybody on that side of the table thinks that I'm wrong, correct me, broad authority, unilateral authority to investigate. And so the reporting requirements are tremendous. But we're dealing with that as well. Corrections officers are going to be next on post. And so we're trying to sort through definitions. What's a minor complaint? What's a major complaint? There are many, many, many things in the bill that are not clear. So, and I'll admit, I only gave a cursory review to your internal affairs policy. But I think I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that as a commission, and I know this was happening based upon my review of minutes, and I'm sure Commissioner Clark can speak to this. I know that at some point when police reform was passed, there was an effort by the commission to go through police reform. I don't know how far that got, but I think that we're going to have to do that so that we can be in sync with our agencies relative to how this works. It's no longer the chief in the agency or even the municipality. It's going to be much deeper and broader than that, because ultimately, if there is a conditional certification, a decertification, there are so many other things that flow from that, many of the state and local agencies are going to have to change their policies. So I'm not saying this is premature, but I think we need to go through the police reform piece together with the internal affairs piece in order to gain an understanding of how complaints work. But I echo what you said about transparency. I think we all want that. Then, of course, there are issues with respect to things that we call wine garden rights and Garrity rights, which attach when investigations occur with respect to personnel matters that are sensitive. And so all of those things are in, their balls in the air right now. So there's going to be a lot of, I think we're going to have to reserve time to have working meetings to do this. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do it.
I can speak to the practical application so far. I'm the one that has to file the reports with Post. I just sat through a training with John Sheft. It's very common in the police training world. He's an attorney, very well renowned. Their definition of a minor complaint is a supervisor having to remind an officer to fuel his car. So we're talking administrative stuff is what they consider mild. Any complaint received by a citizen, I must get that to Post within 48 hours. And that doesn't differentiate between weekdays and holidays. It's 48 hours that that complaint needs to be on their standard form. It doesn't have to, it's not very comprehensive, the initial form, but they want to be aware of it. And then from that point, after the 48 hours, we have to do our due diligence to keep them apprised of any changes in that investigation. That could simply be that we did an investigation. We send them the narratives. We literally send them. So any citizen complaint, we do an IA on, internal affairs investigation on. They'll get all that documentation. I literally save it to PDF and send it to them. So they get all the nuts and bolts of any citizen complaint. And from me to you, we are following this to the letter. I mean, it's just right to do it right out of the bat. So with the changes that came in, we initiated it immediately. There's no sense in waiting. We know it's going that way. So thankfully, we haven't received many, but the ones that we have received, they've received them within 48 hours. So I don't even think they have staff on the other side to acknowledge them within 48 hours, but you got to get in there in 48 hours. It's a cart before the horse thing on the state level, I think. But
it ensures that things don't get slip through the cracks. We have to report within 48 hours, and the people that report can also report to Post. So if they report to Post that we didn't, and they don't have a matching complaint from us, that's going to be a red flag. All of the Post requirements for that is already integrated into our policy. We've already updated all our policies. We had to because of accreditation, but we also do, we work on policies all the time. So if you look on the policy that I gave you starting on page 11, it talks about the reporting criteria to Post, what needs to be given to Post, and what Post investigates, and what the results of those investigations could be for the officers, including revocation of their certifications. So it's all already integrated, and you don't have to go through the Post law because it's already put into that, and it's been checked by accreditation to make sure it was accurate.
Okay. Chief Strahan, obviously we haven't read this, but off the top of your head, do you know when a complaint comes in, what's the timeline? I mean, we'll read this and study it, but
There's no, so it depends on the complaint.
Yeah.
And it depends on the infraction of what the timeline is. An investigation could be as little as 15 minutes, or an investigation could be months, if not longer. Thank God we've never had those, but so the way that we work with our complaints is that because I don't have a deputy chief. All complaints that we receive through the department come to the chief of department. The severity of the complaints get immediately reported to the HR department. And usually, well, I shouldn't say usually because we don't have a lot, but what happens at that point, it goes to HR, and depending on the severity of the complaint, the attorneys are brought in. Right? Before we even get to that point, we have to notify the employees that there's a complaint lodged against them. You know, they have their union representation, and we tell them that we're opening up an investigation into conduct, whatever, unbecoming or whatever. And then we have we start the process here. And it can take a little time. It can take a lot of time, depending on the severity. Yeah, and then we work with HR, and then if there's disciplinary action that needs to follow from there, the discipline is issued. I can issue certain discipline, severe discipline, long suspensions or termination, God forbid, is a decision that comes from the appointing authority. So there's a lot of work that goes into even a simple investigation. You have to provide employees have rights. And you have to afford them the rights, but you also have to do a very robust and detailed investigation into any complaints that come forward. And we work very closely with HR, and our department usually takes the guidance from the HR department on how we proceed.
So I guess, again, going back to, if a complaint comes in about the chiefs to the Public Safety Commission, we'll know about it because we'll receive the complaints. But a complaint about the chiefs could come into the departments. Can you both explain how that would be handled? Would it be passed on to us, to the mayor? How would if a complaint comes in about either of the chiefs, what do you do with that complaint?
Within 2 days, we have to report it to post. So that
Okay.
would be, well, step one would be notifying the mayor. She would be the investigator of that complaint.
Okay.
She would probably hire, I'm not going to speak for her, but a typical process would she would hire an outside investigator, independent of the city of Greenfield. And they would do the investigation and give her the results, and then she would be able to take those results and make a determination. At the end of the investigation, no matter which way it goes, it has to be re-reported to post. Each step of the way, there's a reporting requirement to post. So mid-investigation, within so many days, and it's very voluminous. I mean, there's probably 30 or 40 pages here of how that whole process goes. And one of the first things we would do is take out the policy and reread it to make sure we're not missing any of those steps. But really what you're asking for is that she would be notified and she would be the head investigator.
That's correct. Any complaint lodged against myself would be immediately forwarded to the mayor for her to work with HR or whatever the process would be. Usually it's a private investigator that would, depending on the severity.
Well, I don't think this subject will continue. We have some homework to do. We have a lot of work to do. Does the commissioners have anything else they want to bring up about this subject?
Well, I think the main thing is you have to start back here with your charge from the council, right? You have to start, well, you have to start back on working with the charter.
Yes.
With your charge to the committee here or the commission from the council's side. So when you just gave us this copy, right?
That's a copy of the changes that
Right.
are at the State
So
House at this.
I assume the ones in red are the changes.
Yes.
I think this is from the council going to the state.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yes. This is in the hands of the state for review right now.
Right, so we have to, as a commission, make sure we understand what this charge is.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I'd say this is where the egg starts to crack. In other words, you've got to, before you do much else, you've got to understand this.
Absolutely. That's why I'm bringing it up.
So to me, this would be the place to start. Then you go to your other things. That's just my input, but you don't want to go outside of this before you start looking at the other.
If I can, Commissioner, just remember it still needs to be voted on by the legislation before it becomes
Right.
part of the charter.
But this has been in the works for what, 10 years? A while.
If I may, because I was on the city council when we voted on this. This change has already been voted on by the city council to happen, and it's been passed along to the state. The state senate is now reviewing this and either going to accept it or send it back to the town. So this is changes that have already happened. That's going to go to the state, and if they accept it, it's going to be written into our charter as part of our charter.
Right,
And
they've
we'll come
already
up-
been accepted locally.
By the city council, right? It's been forwarded as a positive recommendation by the city council to be forwarded to the state. It then goes to the mayor, and the mayor has to sign it, accept it, and then all of it gets sent to the state, and that's how that happens. But keep in mind that state and federal law supersedes local law. So the post is, this reporting is more severe than this report, and so this has to be followed also. So those are things that you have to keep in mind also. But this has already been forwarded by the city council to the mayor for acceptance to go to the state and for the Senate to accept it. This language here has already been done. So I just wanted to
Thank you for that.
update everybody on that information.
And the council is still working on this, am I correct?
I believe so, yes. They are. I believe at the last appointment and ordinance meeting, they had mentioned that they wanted to invite the public safety commissioners to review and talk about this before the next city council meeting. I think that's what I heard when I watched the meeting, the recording, but I think they're still working on maybe some additional changes, possibly. But we can ask.
Yeah, we can. I thought the deadline had already gone by for the submittal to the state, but I could be mistaken.
We can ask the question. So I guess what my takeaway would be is, for the commissioners to take this back and really study it and come up with the questions of what maybe individuals don't understand. Because I can tell you, and I'm not talking about the changes, I'm talking about the current charter. There's some things in the current charter that I can tell you as the chair, I do not understand. If we were asked to do certain things, I'm not sure I would know how to go about and do those things. So I'd like to have us to regroup, look at not the new, but the existing, and put the questions on the table. And if we have to go get the answers one way or another, we find out who can answer the questions. But I definitely have some questions on what our responsibilities are with respect to this. And I want to make sure we all understand what they are. The public wants us to public's going to want to know if we understand what our responsibilities are. So I need to understand them. You need to understand them. So I think I'll call to take it back, study it, and maybe next time we could bring up our questions of maybe what individuals don't understand, if that's okay. Does that work for the commissioners?
So if we want a legal opinion, we should ask the city attorney for that.
We can do that.
Okay. But, in looking at I've looked at this a couple of times. I see some major conflicts, as Commissioner Jarvis pointed out, with respect to some of the new proposed language and the superior authority that the state has pursuant to post. So it's not going to matter if, for instance, language that talks about procedures for filing written complaints by the public and investigating complaints, that could be rendered null and void by other considerations relative to internal department operations, collective bargaining agreements, and post.
So I think that's one reason. And I'm pretty sure the appointment and ordinances group last meeting talked about having us come to their meeting and discuss this because there could be conflicts. So I want to make sure that what's in our charter is actually what we can do. We have the power to do. I don't want, this shouldn't be something in the charter that says one thing and we actually can't do anything about it. So I think there has to be a lot more discussion based around public complaints. So we'll continue it at another time, if that's okay.
Just make sure we're just talking about this one piece of paper.
Talking about the charter, yes,
Yeah.
what's in the charter
Right.
at this point in time,
So
yes.
that we're all talking about the same thing.
We're all talking about, there's a lot to this, yes. Okay, so last on the agenda is open discussions. Do any of the commissioners have anything else they want to bring up at this point in time? You all good with everything? Anything new?
Did you guys get set? Did you get your new the IDs?
I did, I got mine.
That's one thing you want to think about. And how did we work out with the badges and stuff?
Well, you're asking in a fiscal year that I have no money. So if you want to just give me a couple more months and we'll see how the budget goes, I might be able to afford some badges.
Okay,
City IDs are issued by
health department.
Health Department through
Yes.
HR.
You need to
Need to
just
go through HR.
contact the HR department. Contact the HR department and they'll send the paperwork over to the health department and you go to Sanderson Street and get your picture taken. Yeah. Exactly.
Right, but you have to have HR give the authorization for that.
Yeah, HR will give authorization to that. All right, I don't think we have to go into an executive session. Does anybody feel we need to go into an executive session?
No.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? Can I have a second?
Second.
Meeting's over. Have a good night. Thank you for everybody attending. Appreciate it. All in favor? Aye, yes. Sorry, all in favor. Thank you. It's been a long night.
8:17.
Long day, another longer day tomorrow.
Recording stopped.
Thank you.
No problem. And
Thank you for everything.
I know like before, I've been up here filling in every now and then, and then sometimes like people push like one reports for response times or how many responses
Yeah.
we've got or past calls. So just you can email Patrick and let him know if you guys want.
So which Patrick is this?
Leonardo.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Pickering got promoted to.
Okay,
vice
Leonardo.
President of operations, but yeah, Leonardo. So. and then
Okay.
If there's something specific you want that we can't get, we can always build it with our team.
Yeah.
They can get any report that
Yeah.
you guys want.
Okay. It might be nice to just supply us with a general report every month,
Okay.
if you could. I mean, so we don't, I mean, if there's anything specific we have to ask for, I think we can. But if you could just supply us with just like a general,
I would say calls.
I'm gonna
and,
leave this.
Mutual aids.
Yeah, no,
Stuff like
no
that.
problem. Because I know like, so all the promotions happen like in November, like October, November. So like Patrick's trying to get his new role